Is rum sweet? That's today's hot topic, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel over the last sort of couple of years on here. There is no right or wrong answer, but hopefully I'm going to guide you through some stuff today to kind of help you understand sweetness levels in rum a bit more. Now, to cover the basics before we sort of semi-dive down the rabbit hole, people naturally assume that because rum is distilled from sugar cane, whether it's sugarcane juice or whether it's molasses or other sort of byproducts from sugarcane, people naturally have it into their head that it's going to be sweeter than a lot of other spirits. The fact is, yes, all right, it is sweet. The base product, the raw material is sweeter. But the fact is, when you distill something, you're collecting essentially vapor. That's which then condenses down into a liquid. That inherently can't be sweet. Does it taste different though? Yes. Now the thing with rum, because it's distilled from sugar cane juice or molasses, or insert other sugar cane byproduct here, because it's inherently distilled from sugar, I would say personally the mouthfeel of the liquid, the rum that comes off the still, the mouthfeel is going to taste slightly different, slightly more luxurious for me personally, than say a harsher whiskey that's come from grain, or vodka that's come from grain, or gin, which is flavoured vodka with juniper. You know, and tequila, I have actually tasted the tequila off the still, and tequila for me also has this sort of luxurious kind of feel as it goes down your throat. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's sweeter. As I said, it just means it's different. But here is the minefield, because as a lot of rum fans will tell you, rum, probably more than any other spirit, although I have to bring gin into this as well, because flavoured gins have got a ton of sugar added to them as well. But inherently, rum is probably the biggest culprit of being sweetened up after distillation. Now, that's not all rums. The simple fact is, some rum brands do add some form of sweetener after distillation. But don't also confuse that with some barrel aging, because some barrels, especially ex-bourbon barrels, and I've tasted 3 or 4 ex-Jim rums aged in ex-Jim Beam barrels now, actually from UK distillers. And actually those Jim Beam barrels, and that's my only experience, the actual physical whiskey that I know of, so I couldn't really comment on other barrels, but I have tasted these ex-Jim Beam barrels, give off a lot of vanilla. Now, vanilla is not necessarily a sweeter or a sweetener, I should say, but tasting vanilla does make you feel or think that the rum is sweeter. So actually, the aging process can trick your mind into thinking it's sweeter when actually it's not. It's just the inherent taste. But then, you know, we can go down all these other minefields where maybe a sherry finished rum, you know, has got sweeter vibes to it because it's had sherry in there. Madeira, again, may be sweeter on the mouthfeel because Madeira is sweeter than whiskey. And let's just bring spiced rum into the equation here, because look, I like my spiced rums. I make no bones about that. I really do like my spiced rums. But there's a line for me, because I understand that all spiced rums have to be sweetened up. You cannot add cinnamon and nutmeg and ginger to a rum without a certain amount of sugar, because if you just add cinnamon to a rum, it's going to taste flipping awful. You need some sort of balance. Now, some spiced rum brands go to the complete polar opposite and add a ton of sugar, because sugar makes things taste better. Fact. So some brands will add a lot, but then some brands add a minuscule amount. Now, there are 2 separate markets for that. You know, we have got your Kraken, your Bumbu, your Dumpupper, your Dead Man's Fingers crowd, the very excessively sweet spiced rums. But then we've also got Chairman's Reserve, Foursquare, a few other UK brands, you know, that add minimal sugar because you don't actually need that much. Now, wouldn't it be lovely if every single brand was open and honest and say, we add this amount of sugar to our rum? That would be the ideal scenario. And look, I want to make things clear here. I don't give a rat's arse, if you like, whether a brand sweetens up their rum. I don't care. For me, if a blender, if a distiller wants to sweeten up their rum, they've done it because that's what makes their product taste as good as what it does. That's fine. What I don't like is not owning up to that or full disclosure, clarity. I want clarity. And this is why, to a certain extent, I do have a lot of banter with, in the rum world, there's like Team Plantation. To break it down, there's Team Plantation and there's Team Foursquare. You know, I have my banter that I am Team Plantation purely, and I do like their rums, I'll be honest. I do like the Torley's rums, I'll be honest again. But I like the visibility, the clarity, the disclosure that Plantation have. You go on their website and even some of the bottles, they will tell you exactly what dosage is. And to my mind, they are the only brand in the world when it comes to rum that actually disclose the sugar, the dosage in every single bottle they produce. Now, I've talked about the legalities and how much sugar you can use in separate videos. In the EU law, it's very different to US law, which is very different to, you know, laws around the world, Australia and, you know, all other places. But in EU law, it is 20 grams of sugar that can be added before it ceases to become a rum. Technically, by the letter of the law, 21 grams of sugar, it ceases to become a rum and it then becomes a rum-based spirit drink. Now, in Plantation's world, the only rum that is right on the border is that. Plantation XO goes to the maximum is 20 grams of sugar per litre, and that is a rum. But US doesn't have that law. I don't think the US actually has a law about the physical amount of sugar that can be added. But we know of certain brands, like That's Not the Rum, I can potentially get it. We have got Diplomatico, for instance, that even though they don't disclose how much sugar is in that, various hydrometer tests and various, whether it's Denmark or Sweden or Iceland, I forget where it actually is now, one of the Scandinavian sort of countries, actually do scientific lab tests on this sort of stuff. And it generally comes out at 38 grams per litre. Doesn't, in EU law, technically make that a rum, but it's still sold as a rum. And as I say, I don't really care. I'm just here to give you facts, that's all. A lot of the rum community really haven't got time for Diplo. When we say Diplo, Diplomatico, everyone's head instantly thinks of that one. And I think that's a crying shame because I flipping well love that. It is sweeter, but it's not as sweet as this, but it's a belting rum. I really do like it. Now, yes, if you've been in rum world for a lot of years, you've developed your palate, you have every right in the world to prefer and only seek out undosed rums. Of course you have. No one can deny that. Even if you're new to rum and you don't want sugar and you can go down that route. But for the wider community, we can't, you know, we have to embrace all rums. Of course we do, because there are some belters out there. And I think writing off a hell of a lot just because they maybe have even like 5 or 6 grams of sugar added to them, I think writing them off is a little bit harsh, if I'm honest. But for all the beginners out there, you know, as I said, it would be lovely if there was just this one great big database that you could go on, or even if brands said it themselves and said, yep, we've added this amount of sugar, that would be absolutely lovely. Because the big factor that comes into play here is that people will drink Diplomatico. Because it's in a lot of supermarkets in the UK, it becomes an entry level rum, if you like, or an accessible rum. It really does. So people start drinking that, and then they might go on to maybe an Appleton. They might maybe go on to a Dawley's or a Chairman's. And the simple fact is, they've got no sugar added to them. So there is a massive world in taste difference between them. There really is. So, and that's where people go, oh no, you know, I don't like that. That's horrible. It's not horrible. It's just not got any sugar added to it to make it as sweet as some brands. So to sum up, is rum sweet? Well, yes, it can be if it's been sweetened up after distillation. But if you get an unsweetened rum, then really it's not going to be too much sweeter than a whiskey, than a tequila, than a vodka or a gin. And actually, if you bring my other favourite spirit into the mix here, brandy, cognac, then I would argue that your head, your taste buds would think brandy is a little bit sweeter simply because it comes from fruit. The base of brandy is grapes. And I'm assuming most of you have eaten a grape, so you know how kind of sweet that is. So just because rum is distilled from sugar, do not automatically think it's sweet. It can be sweetened up, but in the whole, rum, as a base product,